I always used to wish my dad was dead. So the next thing, we hear my mom screaming. So when we rush down, we find they're standing in the sitting room and my dad is strangling her. Like actually strangling her. Like she can't breathe and she can't move his hands. And at that time, my dad was very skinny. You know, the way when an alcoholic is not eating, the way, especially men, they become so thin. So he was very thin, and him and my mom were almost the same height, but she could not get his hands off. It's like he was possessed because he's just strangling her and like laughing. But we're all trying to get him off of her, and we can't. It's like he had gotten supernatural strength. I even took a stool and hit him. The stool, the top part came out, and he's still strangling her. So that was the worst, because if no one would have been there, he would have killed her. So me, I was so angry. I was lecturing him, telling him to get out of this house, never come back. That was in August. So I saw him next in December, and that was the last time. Because the next year, in May, he killed himself. But now I was like, why he's dead? And the last memory he has of me is I hated him, I disrespected him. And I felt so bad because I knew I can never apologize or get another chance. So that guilt ate me for years, and it fueled my depression even more. My name is Mwendwa Mbaabu, from Nairobi, here in Kenya, and I'm 42 years old, and my life has been a testimony of the grace and deliverance of God. I think the worst thing that has ever happened in my life is becoming an alcoholic. Yeah, there are many things that have happened in my life, bad ones, but I think that one was the worst. It was the most traumatic, and maybe because I was older, maybe because I thought I knew better, and maybe because it's something I had sworn would never happen to me, because my dad had been an alcoholic, and he actually died because of alcohol-related consequences. Yeah, my dad committed suicide when I was 19, when I was in high school, when I was 17, and because of his alcoholism, so many bad things happened when I was young. Like when I was a teenager, my dad was abusive to my mom in my teenage years. So it was very traumatic for me. And especially because I was a very sensitive person, I used to feel everything. So when my dad just changed as his alcoholism grew and just became this person I couldn't recognize, it really affected me. Yeah. And as a result, I started experiencing depression really, really early. From around age 12, I was severely depressed. But back then, I didn't know it was depression, you know, because in the 90s, there wasn't any information about mental health or suicide or depression, like none, zero. Yeah, in the early to late 90s, there was nothing. So I just used to wonder what's wrong with me, because I had such a dark mind. I was sad. I was miserable all the time. I hated myself. I hated my dad. I hated my mom. I hated everyone. And you know, there's an English word called angst. I actually discovered this word when I was still in high school, because I used to love English, and it's called angst. It means like when someone is experiencing a state of despair about the state of the world. Like, yeah, it's a very strange word, but it just means that the state of the world, the bad things overwhelm me so much that you're just like depressed about the state of the world. So I used to have that nature. Like I used to carry everything. I was super sensitive as a teenager. Like if I would see like something bad is happening somewhere in the world, I would get depressed about it. So I used to feel everything deeply. So I think that's why my dad's drinking, him beating my mom, him not taking care of his financial responsibilities affected me, I think, more than everyone else in my family. Later on, I discovered the word empath as I grew older, and I was like, that's me. Yeah, just feeling everything. Like even if someone else is suffering, I would feel it. And I think for empaths, when you're a teenager, it's heightened at that time before you learn how to manage it. So at that time, it just used to push me into constant depression. Like, even if it's just something I watched on Oprah, because Oprah was famous back then, I would get depressed. Like, how can people do this? Why is this happening? People are so evil. So yeah, so I was just depressed and sad all the time. And I became suicidal very early. I always wanted to die. But the strange thing is I didn't even know there was a word like suicide. As in, that's how the world was so different back then. And you know, even here in Kenya, we only had like 2 TV stations. So I'd never had that word. I'd never had the word depression. But I remember when I was in high school, when I was in Form 2, a Form 1 girl who was a CU leader, I ran away from school one day. And it shocked everyone because she was a CU. I think she was the CU secretary or something. I can't remember. And then a few days later, after she ran away from school, we were told she killed herself. Yeah. I remember I was 15. I was in Form 2. Then we were called to the assembly and told what happened to that girl. And we were all shocked because apparently she was pregnant and she didn't want her parents to find out. And the crazy thing is that assembly shook everyone. But for me, it actually gave me an idea. I was like, wow, that's what I'm going to do. Like, that's the odd thing. Because I'd never thought I could actually kill myself, but I always wanted to die. So when that girl killed herself, I got the idea. I was like, then that's what I'm going to do. So the next holiday after we closed school, I went to the chemist, but obviously the chemist didn't sell me those medicines. I don't even know how she was able to do that because they told me they can't sell to me. So I tried to ask myself, what's the next best thing I can use? And I knew Puritans make someone sleepy. So I went to the shop and bought all the Puritans that guy had. He had like 7, but those weren't enough. So I just mixed with painkillers, Panadols, all the medicines I found in the house. But fortunately, it didn't work because that evening when I took those pills, for me in my mind, I knew I was going to die. And I was very happy about it. I just swallowed the pills and went outside to talk to my friends, knowing in my mind that I'm just going to go hang out with my friends because I'll never see them again. Then when I go back to the house, I'll just sleep and that's it. I'll never wake up. And I was just calm about it. I felt nothing. But I woke up like at 1 a.m. in the night and I was not dead. But that was my first and final suicide attempt. I think because already I had attended enough sermons in school, when I woke up and I was not dead, a thought came in my mind, you would have gone to hell. It just came to my mind clear as day that if you had died, you'd have gone to hell. And so I think the fear of going to hell kept me from ever attempting suicide, but it didn't take away the desire to die, only that I couldn't do anything about it. So now I switched it to always asking God to kill me. You know, when I was in high school, I would tell God, me, I don't want to be alive. I didn't ask to be born. Please just kill me. And I did that for so many years, but it never worked. You know, it didn't work that way. I grew up in a pretty normal middle-class family, pretty normal in the beginning. We grew up well. My parents had good jobs. We lived in good estates for back then in the 80s. At some point, we even lived in Gumo Estate. So we were okay, what I guess people would have called middle class. Yeah, we went to good schools. So everything seemed okay for the first couple of years. But my dad used to drink a lot. And now unknown to everyone, he had in him the makings of an alcoholic. So as he continued drinking, as the years went by, along the way, he lost a job because he was found drinking in the office. But he was also going through his own family issues, like conflicts with his mom and brothers. Yeah, I won't get so much into that, but because of the issues my dad was going through, he drank. He coped by drinking. Yeah, but he had been drinking since I think high school. So he had always been a drinker. And back then, no one really thought it was a big problem because in the 80s, people just drank. Like those normal families where every weekend you're going out to Shade Hotel, and these are places which were popular in Nairobi back then. The kids go swimming, the parents are drinking, then once in a while there are barbecues at home with my dad's friends. So that was life. We just thought everyone drank. And then for me, most Kenyans say they're Christians, so everyone was a Christian. So we rarely used to go to church, but we were just known to be a Christian family, like most Kenyan families, by name, by name only. But there was no like awareness of who God is, who Jesus is, apart from just head knowledge. Like God is real, Jesus is real, and yeah. But our family was just what you'd call a normal family back then. Like my parents were working, providing for the family. My dad was an accountant, my mom a nurse. So in terms of finances, it was okay in the beginning until now when my dad's drinking spiraled. He was fired from his job, I think around 1992, 91 there. And at that time I was 10 years old. And that's when life began going downhill. I think now not having a job, not having money, he drank even more to cope with that. And he was drinking like money he didn't have. So now we began accumulating rent arrears. And then now because of his excessive drinking, he also can't get a job. So it was like a self-defeating cycle. He's drinking to cope, but the drinking keeps him from getting a job and making any forward progress, So now as a result, because of his personality, I guess, he just escaped through alcohol. He didn't want to face his problems, his responsibilities. So he just kept drinking and drinking and drinking. And for me now as a child, with no awareness of anything called alcoholism or depression, nothing, I thought he was choosing to be like that. So I just began hating him. Whereas before my dad had been my favorite parent, now I just began disrespecting him. I didn't like him. I didn't understand why he's drinking so much. And it was also embarrassing because sometimes he would come into the estate drunk and he's staggering and falling, and we're outside with our friends. So I just, I think because of my sensitive nature and also having a very black and white personality, I just began hating him. I think I would say that before, when he had a job, when he was doing okay, my dad was never a talkative person. He was quiet. So I can't really say that we ever sat down and talked, but he used to be there. Like you'd see him, he would play with us when we were kids. He would take us out, and then he was just a nice person. He never used to quarrel us. So he was just nice, and personally had a lot in common with him. He used to love writing. He used to buy me board games. Like he was intelligent. We used to have the same taste in music and movies. So as a kid, at least I knew my dad and I are very similar, and I liked him like as a person. He was a cool guy. Girls tend to gravitate towards their dads because your mom is the one who's making for you noise. You've not done this. But dad just comes into the rescue, buying you nyama choma, buying you this and that. So now when he was no longer doing those things and now he's drinking excessively, and then now to make matters worse, he began beating my mom, something he had never done before, all those years of drinking. It just started suddenly when I was becoming a teenager. So that was very traumatic because now it's like I'm wondering, who is this? It's like he has become like a monster to me. But in terms of us kids, he never did anything to us. He never beat us. He never quarreled us. He just used to avoid us. I used to know when he comes home late, I never used to sleep. I would just be in my bed waiting. When I hear him coming up the stairs, I know the next thing, once their bedroom door closes, my mom will start screaming. So that was like my life. I used to live in fear. I never used to sleep. When I was in high school, like I would just be waiting for him. When I hear him coming up the stairs, I just know what to expect next. So like for example, when my dad would go in and start beating my mom, I would get really angry and I would barge into their room and tell him to stop. So it was a strange thing because I was such a shy person, timid, and never used to talk. When my dad would start beating my mom, I would become like a lion. I would not even cry. I would just get into their room, confront him, and start telling him, what kind of a man are you? Stop. And then he would stop. He would stop, and my mom would tell us, please go to bed. But my sister would just be like at the door watching, crying. She never interfered, never verbally expressed anything, but she would cry a lot. But once my mom would tell us, because my mom also, I think she didn't want us to disrespect our dad, so she would just tell us, Mwendwa, you go to bed, everything is fine. But I would get violently angry, like really angry, and I would just glare at him, and he would stop. He used to listen to me and stop and say nothing. Then we'd go back to sleep, and for that night, it would stop. And then in the morning, my dad's pattern was that when you'd get sober, he would write my mom letters to apologize. That I'm sorry, I was drunk. So like he used to feel guilty, but it's like once he got drunk, he couldn't help himself. It's like something else used to take over him. And later now, when I developed an alcohol problem, I began to understand him. Many years, over 20 years later, when he was already gone, because he died when I was in Form 4. My last encounters with him before he died, when I was in Form 3, August holidays. My dad had disappeared for 2 weeks, around 2 weeks, and we hadn't seen him. Those days there were no mobile phones or anything, so we didn't know where he was. So everything, according to us in the house, everything now was fine because we were at peace. So I remember this evening, my dad came home in the evening. My mom was sitting, and I was watching those 6:30 shows that used to be there back then. I think it was Neighbors or Home and Away or something. I can't remember. So he came in, drank, sat down, and then just began picking a fight with my mom from nowhere. Began telling her bad things, very bad things. And I used to sit next to the television. Like I used to take a small chair and put it next to the TV. That's how I used to watch TV back then. So I'm hearing everything they're saying behind me. And I don't know why that day he was so angry. He just began telling her things, telling her the way she's having affairs with so-and-so, random people, as in impossible people even, uncles. And then he began telling her, maybe even these children are not mine, in front of us. And so I don't know, I was not getting angry. I was boiling. Back then I really had a lot of anger issues. And I was 16 at that time. So when he said that these children may not even be mine, it was the last stroke. I turned to him and told him sarcastically that, like, yeah, we are not your children. That's why I look exactly like you. Yeah. So I just told him that. Then I stood up and went upstairs. So everyone went upstairs because now they began really shouting and we couldn't stay there. So we left them. They were still arguing downstairs. So the next thing, we hear my mom screaming. And it was still early, like 7 p.m.-ish. So when we rushed down, we find they're standing in the sitting room and my dad is strangling her. Like actually strangling her. Like she can't breathe and she can't move his hands. And at that time, my dad was very skinny. The way when an alcoholic is not eating, the way, especially men, they become so thin. So he was very thin, and him and my mom were almost the same height, but she could not get his hands off. So we ran down, so we're all, and then it's like he was possessed because he's just strangling her and like laughing. Then we all rushed down. I think me, the house girl, my auntie, my sister, of course, she was just standing aside crying. But we're all trying to get him off of her, and we can't. It's like he had gotten supernatural strength. I even took a stool and hit him. The stool, the top part came out, and he's still strangling her. It was so my mom is just crying, trying, she can't breathe. So I just ran out, called the watchmen, the ones who came and separated them. Then we took my mom. My auntie lived in the same estate, so we took her to my auntie's place while we figured out what to do next. And my mom had 2 siblings in the same estate, my aunt and my uncle. So we took her to my aunt's, then we told my uncle to come and like talk to my dad or whatever. But I remember I was so angry that day. Like when I would get angry with him, I would not cry. I would just be shaking with anger. So I just went and I began really making for him noise. So but when my mom left, he was just lying on the sofa, like nothing has happened, just lying on the sofa. So me, I was so angry. I was lecturing him, telling him to get out of this house, never come back. Then the watchmen were just, them I think they were being entertained. So they were just laughing and saying, ati basi umpe nguo zake aende. And I'm a teenager, so I ran upstairs. I was just taking his clothes and throwing them down the stairs in anger, you know. So the watchman told me to give him a bag. I think they were just like having fun. They were so I just put them in trash bags and told him to get out. But he was not saying anything. He was just staring at me and looking like he has done nothing. Like, so that was the worst, because if no one would have been there, he would have killed her. My mom used to tell me, like, sometimes I would be very angry with my dad, but she would tell me to stop, like to stop disrespecting him, which was the correct thing to do. But there was no conversations really about, you know, your dad is doing this because of this, or this is what I'm going through, nothing. So I think Ash just did what she thought was best, taking care of us, always being there, paying rent, and he's not paying rent and working hard. So my mom was always there, like she was always present, cooking, looking for money, and putting on a brave face, trying to get us not to disrespect our dad, me especially, because my sister Ash was okay. Ash never used to treat my dad badly. You know, I'm the one who really hit hard. Yeah. And yeah, of course, now when I look back with the information I have, I usually even tell my daughter I would have done it differently. I wouldn't have been that mean to my dad, because to be honest, I was completely disrespectful. I know some people say, you know, you had a right to, you are a child, you shouldn't have done those things, but I think I could have handled it better. Because that day when he tried to kill her, the next morning, you know, he was just told, you have to leave now. Like, now, this is where things have gotten, you can't stay here anymore. So he called his brother and he moved everything from the house and left. I think he went to stay with his brother in Nairobi, somewhere in Nairobi. And then that was in August. So I saw him next in December, and that was the last time. Because the next year in May, he killed himself. I remember that day, it was May, and I was doing agriculture in Form 4. And so we were preparing our shambas for KCSE. And so that day we were having a practical. We were at the shamba, just weeding our sorghum and everything. Then the headmistress secretary came to pick me. And there's a card she used to carry if someone has been bereaved. I don't know why she used to carry a particular colored card. I can't remember if it was yellow or red. So I saw her, she came with that card and called me, and I knew something has happened. So I remember I went to the office, then I find my uncle and my auntie there. People even who had never visited me on visiting days. I was like, I just knew something bad had happened, so I just kept quiet. And then our headmistress, who was usually very tough that day, she was so nice. Hi, Mwendwa. Then she told me to sit. Then I was told, my uncle told me, that's my mom's brother. He told me that my dad is very, very sick and he wants to see us. And I was like, in my heart, I was like, yeah, right. I knew, like I just knew. So I was told to go and pack a few things so that we go with them. I go with them. So when I remember that walk to the dormitory, I was in St. George's in Lavington. So when I was walking to the dorm, it's like I was having an out-of-body experience. I was just numb, but I knew my dad was dead. Like, I was not that foolish to believe that he's very sick and they've come for me to go and see him. So I just went, packed my things, like I was just numb. Came back. When we went to the parking lot, I found another uncle of mine from Meru. He's in the car with my mom. In the parking lot, my mom has been crying. Her eyes are red. She just looks so pitiful. I just knew my dad was dead, even if they didn't tell me. But now there in the parking lot, they told me the truth. Then I remember one of my uncles, down from Meru, called me aside and told me that he knows it's a very tough time, but I should be strong for my mom. So I didn't cry because my mom was in a very bad state. I knew she was just looking at me like, if I would have cried, she would completely have lost it. You know, my mom is a very sensitive person. So for me, I was just quiet. I was like shocked. So we went for lunch. And I remember in the restaurant, I went to the bathroom. I cried kidogo, wiped my tears, came back. So it was shock first. It was shock. I don't think I fully processed it until later now as the funeral and everything's unfolding. I was just in a state of shock. I was not even crying. Then we went for the funeral. And of course, since my grandmother, my dad's mom and uncles they were not in good terms with my mom. They had really mistreated my mom. They didn't like her because of other issues. Not anything she had done, but just because she refused to do things they wanted. And I think because of the conflicts they were having with my dad, they used to think it's her fault for whatever reason. So we went to the funeral like visitors. Like my mom was not part of the planning, neither her family members. They did everything. So we just turned up there like visitors on the day of the funeral. And then I went to my grandmother's house to go to the toilet. I remember when I was coming out, my 5-year-old cousin who lived there in Meru tells me that my grandmother told them that me and my sister are the devil's children. She tells me that in Kimeru. I was shocked. And she's a 5-year-old girl. I was like, I felt so bad, but I didn't. Again, I was just numb because I knew they hated us anyway. So I even viewed my dad's body and I didn't cry. Then we went to the gravesite. Now when the body was being lowered into, the casket was being lowered into the ground, that's when I broke down. I don't know what happened. I just began sobbing, like I couldn't even control it. And I was the kind of person who didn't like crying in front of people. But that time, I couldn't, something just took over. It hit me. But I think the real reality hit me now after post the funeral. Now when I went, because immediately after that, not even a week, I went back to boarding, to school. And you're expected to just continue with life as usual. No one has spoken to you about anything. And by that time, we have been told what happened. So we knew it was suicide, but we were told not to tell anybody. Like not to go out and telling people like in school. So we just were told to tell people that it was a short illness or whatever. So for me, the emotions, the major one was guilt. I felt really guilty because I always used to wish my dad was dead. Always, even in my journals, I used to write, I wish he was dead. I wish he could die. And so now I was like, my wish has come true. And I felt so, because deep down, I thought like I really wanted him to die. I used to write that when I was in pain and hurt. But now I was like, why he's dead? And the last memory he has of me is I hated him, I disrespected him. And I felt so bad because I knew I can never apologize or get another chance. So that guilt ate me for years and it fueled my depression even more. Yeah. So I think I don't even know how I got the grade I got in KCSE because I was so depressed. I never even used to study. I was just there. I was like in my own world. Just remember, I still had depression before he died. Now after he has killed himself, the depression is worse. I'm just there. I was like living in my own world the rest of the year. I think I studied for KCSE. I only studied very little. I just didn't care. Like for me, I didn't even see any future for myself. In my mind, back then, I used to know I wouldn't live long because I was constantly suicidal. So I didn't have ambitions for the future. Like, you know, the way some young people, some will say, no, I want to be an accountant, a doctor. I want to go to this university. I want to be this. Me, I had no ambitions for my life because I knew I don't want to be alive and I want to die, so I don't think I'm going to live long. So I didn't like have any vision of the future or ambition. I was just there, just living day to day, wishing I was dead. That was my existence. But the strange thing is, after high school, because also high school itself was I didn't like high school at all. But when I joined university in 2000, for some strange reason, university, because now it had been like a year since my dad died, university was okay for me. It actually gave me a new lease of life because I was in Desta and then we had a very good library. It was in Desta, me, I was doing BCom accounting, but I don't know how I came across the psychology books in Desta. I don't know if we did a psychology course. I'm trying to remember. I don't know if, because there were some mandatory courses you did once in first year. I don't know if Psychology 101 was one of them. I can't remember how I came across psychology books in the library, but it changed everything. when I read those books and saw things like depression described there, mental illnesses, I was like, my God, this is me. Like, you would have seen me excited thinking that I've read some wonderful thing, but I was like, this is what I've been having all these years. I'm not crazy, because I used to think I'm a freak. There's something terribly wrong with me, because my mind was so dark. Like, I used to write horrible things in my diary. I used to hate the world. I was constantly sad. And so now when I was reading those books and seeing all the symptoms of depression listed there, I was ticking everything. I was like, my God, I have depression. I'm not like an abnormal freak of nature. I'm not like the black sheep of the family. I have a mental illness. So I was actually excited because I didn't want to be that way. So when I started reading those things, I even began reading those books for fun. Though I was doing a different degree, like I just mastered the mental illnesses. I was like, wow. So now, because I knew this is what is wrong with me, I began looking for help for myself. And back then, even like things like therapy were not common things. And if they were there, they were crazy expensive, because they were not like now where people are going for sessions, so they're discounted. There were very few psychologists, most were psychiatrists, and they were very expensive. So I think when I was in Desta, I managed to get some money, and I paid for myself. I went to a money counseling center myself and talked to them and told them I'm a student, I don't have money. So they gave me like a discounted rate, and I used to use my pocket money. Because I never told anybody. I didn't even tell my mom. But now when I began going for those sessions, they were not helping me. Like, I don't know, like I would tell them my problems, then they would try to counsel me, but I don't know what was up with me, because it's like, I don't know if you've heard of people who, like, they already know what the therapist is going to tell them, so it's not working because of everything she's telling me, I know. You get? So it was so weird. Like, the therapist would really be trying her best to tell me, you know what, be positive, this is this. But it's like, I understand what my problem is. So she's not helping me because it's not a solution. And even the coping skills she's telling me, I know them. I think I was just too smart for my own good. So even whatever the psychologists were telling me, I had studied in the books, so I knew it, and it was not helping me. So that didn't help me, and I just continued on. Like, in university, I was a good student. I loved studying, and I loved the freedom of university. It wasn't the restricted environment of high school, which I didn't like. Here, at least I had my own time. I could go home, come to school daily. I could choose my own friends. And then, because I never used to get along with girls, so I loved being in an environment with a lot of boys rather. So that part of education in Desta was good, but now I was still self-distracting, you know. I got into relationships early, going out with my boyfriends, drinking, just trying to find acceptance. For me at that particular time, I don't think I had anything necessarily against alcohol, because like all my uncles drank, my mom drank like socially, like on weekends. In fact, we used to buy for her the alcohol in the supermarket. So I didn't really necessarily have an issue with alcohol. I had an issue with the way my dad drank, because I had seen other people drinking moderately in my family, because almost everybody drank. So me, I'd grown up seeing everybody drinking. So I didn't think, it wasn't like there was just this one person who drank, and then now it made me think alcohol was a bad thing. And I never even ever sat down and said I will never drink or anything, but I always used to say I will never be like my dad. But I think because of my dad's drinking also, it kept me from ever getting into drinking in high school. I was a pretty good girl. I never did anything wrong in high school at all, and I always wanted to be a good person, you know. But in campus, the reason why I even tasted alcohol was because I had a boyfriend who drank. Because those days, guys who drank just used to take their girlfriends out. So Nimi, I remember the first time he took me out, it's like I felt like I had to also ask for something to drink, because he was drinking. So I think my first drink was, there was a drink which used to be called Reds, which later disappeared. It used to taste like apple. But I never used to drink much. So in those years, alcohol was not a problem for me. My major problem was depression. I was still very depressed. Even when it looked like my dad, I had thought now that my dad is not there, somehow I'll stop being depressed. But I realized that the depression was not even because of him necessarily, because even after he died, I was still depressed. And now I think I just had a predisposition to depression. That's the best way I can describe it. Because later on, I discovered that in my grandmother's side of the family, there were some mental illnesses. So there may have been a genetic predisposition to depression for me, because my dad was depressed, and other people I found out about later in my grandmother's side of the family, my dad's mom, there was a mental illness issue. It could have been that. I don't know why. It could have been my sensitive personality, but the depression didn't go away. It continued till my late 20s. So you see now, in Desta, I discovered that I have depression, but I didn't get a solution for it. I think I only went for one session, then I stopped going. And at that time, I was not open enough to tell my mom or that I had depression. So I was trying to deal with it on my own. But then now, when I would have like a boyfriend, it would mask it. Like, it's like now having a boyfriend would give like a high, like someone loves me and cares for me, so I would not feel depressed at that moment until maybe the relationship ends, then I'm depressed again. So it was like a looming issue there constantly. Sometimes if a good thing happens, I would feel okay. Then if I'm just alone, I just feel depressed. I was just constantly depressed, and to be honest, I don't know why. And then when I was 20, something traumatic happened, and I got pregnant when I was in I think second year of university. And I knew I can't tell anyone, and I can't have a baby at that time, because my mom had been through so much. My dad has died when I'm in Form 4. We have no money. Actually, for me to go to Daystar, a very big fundraising was done by family members, which raised my entire university school fees. So there's no way, in my reasoning back then, there's no way I was going to disappoint everyone by telling them I've gotten pregnant at 20. So I decided to have an abortion. Yeah, and yeah. So, and that guy kept telling me not to do it. I told him, I can't. You don't know what my family has been through. I cannot have a baby. But I knew it was wrong. But I felt like I had no way out. So I did it, and it traumatized me badly. I fell into a deep, deep, deep depression. I hated myself. And then worst, my boyfriend broke up with me after that. Or rather, I broke up with him because he didn't go through the procedure with me. He went to drink instead. So I spiraled into a dark depression for a few months. And one day, I decided it was a long holiday in Daystar. So because I was so depressed and I needed something to help me feel better, I was like, in my mind, I don't know how this works, but something in my mind was telling me, your dad used to escape by drinking alcohol. So you go and buy hard liquor also. Remember, up to this point, I've only drank like a few cans of Reds. Few when I got with my boyfriend only, so I don't drink. By all standards, I'm not a drunkard. I even used to hate going clubbing. So I was not someone who drank at all. But this day I remember that day I decided I'm going to go and buy hard liquor. And then I remember we're living in Donholm. I was so embarrassed. I said I won't buy anywhere in Donholm where anyone knows me. I went to Umoja. I walked to Umoja. There was a shortcut. Or Tena. Actually, it was Tena. I went to some random wines and spirits in Tena. And I just pointed to something that I didn't even know the names of liquors. I pointed to some white. It was gin. London Dry Gin, Chelsea Gin or something like that. I pointed and bought. Then he put for me in a brown bag. Then I drank it. There was a field near our house. I just went to that field and drank it just like that without even water. I was just drinking. I feel like my tongue has become numb. I just drank it pole, 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 pole. It finished. Then I was just walking around the estate alone listening to music. I had a CD player. When it finished, I was feeling nice. I was feeling like, wow, I'm feeling nice. I'm feeling that high feeling. So I decided to go and buy another one. Remember, I've finished a quarter and I've never drank anything like that before. This is my first time. What I didn't know is that you don't get drunk with liquors instantly. It takes time. So I've finished a quarter. I walk again and buy in a different wines and spirits. No, I don't want to be seen in the first one. You see, it's like even back then, it's like I knew I was doing something wrong. Why, I don't know. I went and bought another one. This time I bought rum, what my mom used to drink. I went and bought rum. This one now I went with it to my room, locked myself, drank it pole pole. I don't know what I was doing, listening to music. Then I decided, now I was so high, I decided to go for a walk. There's another flat in our estate. I used to like to go to the rooftop and just chill there, like listening to music. The last thing I remember, the last thing I remember is walking out of the house to go for a walk. It was around 3 p.m. The next thing I remember, I am waking up in a hospital. Doctors and nurses are I just open my eyes, then there are lights like this. I'm just seeing lights. I'm seeing my mom is standing over me crying. There are doctors and I'm like, where am I? What is going on? I was horrified. Remember, the last thing, I was walking out of the house to go for a walk. Now I'm waking up in my mom's hospital where my mom actually worked because she was on duty. So I'm seeing my mom here in nurse's uniform crying. I'm seeing doctors. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done? What has happened? And I think I just closed my eyes because I didn't want even to imagine what has happened. Wow, it was bad. My mom left the house nicely to go to work. Then her daughter is being brought to the hospital. And remember, I never used to drink. I never used to do anything. I was just a good girl. So later on, I was told that I got alcoholic poisoning. Apparently, I walked out to go for a walk in that flat. When I got into that flat, started climbing the stairs, I blacked out on the stairs. But some young guys who were my boyfriends, my ex-boyfriend's friends, knew me. So they saw me and knew this is Mwendwa, because it was still in the estate. So they carried me, took me home, but I was in such a bad state that the house girl called the neighbors to tell them to like take me to hospital or call my mom. So I was taken, they called my mom, she told them to bring me to Gertrude's hospital. So I was in that hospital for 2 days on a drip, being treated for alcoholic poisoning. Because remember, it is my first time basically drinking that type of liquor, and I've drank like an entire half liter or something. So I was completely dehydrated. And that was like 2 years after my dad died. But it was very traumatic for me and embarrassing. Can you imagine? I couldn't believe it. It was like I felt like I'm in a movie. And so now, because my mom's family is close, she had already called people because she didn't know what was happening. In her mind, she thought someone drugged me. You see? So I think she had called her people. So family members came to visit me in that hospital, and I was so embarrassed that I just used to face the wall and pretend I'm sleeping because I was too embarrassed to look at anyone. But my mom, she made up a story and just told them that I went to a party and I was drugged. Because me, I told her the truth, but she couldn't tell them the truth, you know. So she just told them that I was drugged. So people were sympathizing with me, but they didn't know it was my own fault. But that experience changed me. It traumatized me so much that I think within 2 months, I got born again. I got saved alone in the house. And being saved made things better for like a year, because it lifted the depression. When I really cried out to God and repented and everything and got saved, my life changed. I remember the next day after I got saved, I just felt like the world was brand new. Like I remember waking up and that cloud of depression, which I used to feel like there was a cloud, like the world is dark, it was gone. I was just completely free of depression instantly. And then I was so happy. I remember it was such a radical salvation, and I was just alone in the house. I remember I went and told my mom to forgive me for the way I've always been rude to her. I apologize to my sister. I apologize to everyone in the house because of that I was so mean. I was always rude, moody. And, you know, like everyone in the family used to know me as I'm moody. When visitors come, I run and hide in the bedroom. I don't talk to people, you know. And I didn't want to be like that. I was depressed, but then they didn't know. They thought I'm just rude. I don't like being around people. So, and that used to make me feel worse. So I already used to feel like no one likes me. I'm the black sheep of the family. Everyone loves my sister. No one likes me. And they can't understand me because it's true. And it's true, I was moody. I was extremely shy. So my way of coping with my shyness was to hide from people. So when people come, I just go hide in my room and only appear when people are leaving. But it's because I was extremely shy. I couldn't be around many people. But then they thought I was just rude. You know, also salvation, when you're newly born again, there's like a high. Like, and you're discovering God loves you, everything. So I joined a church and became very active. At that time, I was just 20. I was in second year of Dista, but I became very active in my church. But even salvation cannot fix trauma completely. You still have to work through. So I still had a lot of trauma, feelings of low self-esteem, insecurity. I didn't love myself. And I used to think at that time, erroneously, I thought, now that I'm born again, everything will be perfect. My life will just be perfect. Now God is happy with me. And then I used to have a lot of guilt because of the bad things I had done, you know, especially the abortion. So it's like at that time, I feel like my salvation was not 100% based on the right thing. I felt like I was trying to please God, to perform for God. So I thought the more things I did in church, the more God is happy with me. And then if I would fail in even one thing, like let's say, it was really bad. I had a performance-based salvation and it did not last. It can't last that way. Because if, for instance, I did not read my Bible today, because I'd set myself a schedule for reading the Bible, I'll read this number of chapters, I'll wake up at this time to pray, I have to attend every meeting in church. So if I would miss like reading the Bible, I would condemn myself or torment myself and think now I can't even please God, I can't do anything right. Then I condemn myself. Then when I condemn myself, I hide from God. So it was very bad because now within a year I was burnt out. I was like, this salvation thing, because now then I thought that church now, because remember I'd never been a church person. So I thought in church now it will be a perfect world, perfect people, everything will be butterflies and rainbows from now on. That wasn't the case. I came to realize in church also, people are hurting each other. People are not what they seem. Like people are claiming to be saved, but they're doing funny things. So I was also not getting disappointed by things I was seeing in church. I'm trying to perform for God. Then I'm feeling like, I feel like I was blackmailing God. Because I remember that times I used to tell God, after everything I've been doing in church, why is this and this happening? You see, so it's like now I began getting bitter at God. And it's not God's fault. It's me what a false premise. I thought if I do a transaction for God here, God will do this for me, you know, which was just completely off. And so by the time I was graduating from Desta, I was burnt out. And then I can't remember exactly what happened, but some things must have happened in church to disappoint me within the youth ministry. I can't remember what exactly. So I was like, I'm not even going to do these ministries anymore. I'm tired. I'll just be going to church on Sunday. And pretty soon, going to church every Sunday became every other Sunday. Then, now, after graduating from Desta, now I was left there. Now it's time to start looking for jobs. It's like the busyness I had in school is finished. The ministries I was doing in church, all that activity is finished. So I'm just there. I have to confront myself again. And the same old depression started coming back. And then one day I meet this guy and he tells me, someone I knew from before who had always been hitting on me, even when I was in high school, but I always used to avoid him because I knew he was a womanizer. So now I meet him randomly one day when I was walking and he invites me out. And out of rebellion, I just decided I will go. And I did it on purpose, knowing I have been born again. I'm not supposed to do this, but it's like I was angry at God. I don't even know what I was angry at. I just decided I'm going to go. I went out with him to a bar. The guy, you'd think after the experience I had when I was in hospital, I'll never touch alcohol again. I go out with this guy. He's taking Guinness. Then he asks me, what will you drink? Remember, now we're in a bar, so I can't ask for hard liquor, and I've had a bad experience with it before. So I just say, I will drink what he's drinking. So I'm given a Guinness. And Guinness is heavy again, and I've not drunk for like almost 2 years now. Again, the last thing I remember is that we're drinking with this guy in the bar. The next thing, it's 4 a.m. in the morning, I'm waking up, and I'm in this guy's house. And I can't remember, genuinely, I can't remember leaving that bar. I can't remember walking with him, going there. But I woke up there. And it's 4 a.m. in the morning, and I was not the kind of person to do that. I was horrified. I was so horrified. I woke up without the bottom part of my clothes, sleeping in his bed. I was so disgusted. I was so angry at myself. And then I have a splitting headache because of what I drank. I remember I just woke up, put on my clothes, and I didn't even, he was sleeping. I just opened the door. I didn't even know where I was. I just opened the door, went outside the gate. Then that's when I realized where I was. It was just a neighboring estate. It's 4 a.m., so it's still darkish. I begin now walking home, feeling so bad. Then, as God or whoever, who am I to meet when I'm walking home? My mom going to work. We just meet her like this. She just looks at me badly and goes to work. I was so embarrassed. I just went home and I don't know, I just like blocked it. I said I will never talk to that guy again. I was so angry. But unfortunately, I got pregnant. And that's how I got pregnant with my daughter, just after a few months after graduating. And this time, because of the last experience, I knew I cannot have an abortion. And now I know abortion is murder. I've been born again right before this, so I cannot go and have an abortion. I can't. Even if I made a mistake, I went and drank, abortion is something I can't do. The other time I could have had an excuse, I wasn't born again, or whatever. This time I know, so I knew I can't. But now when I see, God always used to fix me, like to face things even if I don't want. Because now, this other time, I was just taken to my mom's hospital. This time, I meet my mom like this. The day I found out I was pregnant, I went to a cyber. I don't know what I was Googling. I was trying to Google what to do when you find out you're pregnant. I was so traumatized. And in my mind, I told myself, I can never tell my mother. So I began strategizing. I was telling myself, now I'm just going to look for money, buy a ticket to Mombasa, and just go there and somehow start a new life there. I was planning crazy things which are not even practical, because remember, I've grown up in this suburban family, even I don't know anything. I don't even know. And then I was such a sheltered person. I never used to go anywhere alone. I was so shy, so I never even used to go clubbing. Like, I was so sheltered. But here I'm strategizing how I will run away and go to Mombasa. Because I think I had seen movies where, like American movies, where someone goes to another state and begins their own life. So I was busy fantasizing, telling myself, because I can never tell my mom, it will destroy her. I can't believe I've done this. So now I'm just going to run away. I don't know how. Maybe I'll just go to Mombasa, look for a job. But again, God set me up. I left the cyber. And then I don't know what possessed me to carry the pregnancy results, because I went to a clinic, so they gave me a piece of paper from the lab saying positive. I carried that paper for some reason. So I went into the house, walked into the bedroom, took something, and then left. I think I went back to this. I think I came back home with the pregnancy results. Then I went to the cyber. So now when I come back home, I find my mom sitting in the sofa. Then she tells me, Mwendwa, just sit here. I sat. Then she asks me, what's this? The paper with the pregnancy results. Kumbe, I dropped it in the living room. I don't know how I dropped it. But I think it was God sparing me what I was planning to do. I think I would have done something crazy because I was never going to get the courage to tell her. So she saw it the same day and I didn't talk. She asked me questions. I was just quiet. I was so embarrassed. I was just shaking. I never said a word. I never said anything. I just kept quiet. There's always that idea you have of who you are. That was not how my life was supposed to go. But it's like, I feel like at that time, I was always self-distracting without even wanting to. I was constantly self-distracting. There was the image of me in my head and who I knew myself to be, but I was always doing the complete opposite of that, So, yeah, so when I was pregnant, it was a dark time. The depression came back full swing because like now I've ruined my life. Like I'm 22 and I've gotten pregnant and the guy is completely responsible, not even somebody even I can even count on or even someone I liked to begin with, just some random person I decided to go out with out of some rebellion, like, I'm going out. I just went because I was bored. I was like feeling like, I've been serving God and now like I just don't care anymore. Like it was so foolish. And then the one time I get pregnant and then now it was difficult. It was so difficult because now I even stopped applying for jobs. I just decided to just stay like that until I get my daughter. So the first few months of my pregnancy were bad because I was so depressed, so depressed. I was suicidal. I think because I was, when someone is feeling guilty, especially when you're young, when you know you've done something wrong, sometimes you turn around and then become rude to other people. So for me now, I was always being rude to my mom. I don't want to talk to her because I was feeling guilty, So my moodiness came back. I was just isolating. It was so bad. And then to make matters worse, when I told that guy, he tells me to have an abortion and he tells me he's actually living with a lady who is 9 months pregnant. So the house he took me to was his mom's house, the SQ, but he was apparently living in another apartment with another lady who was 9 months pregnant. He was basically married. But I didn't know all this when he asked me out. I just thought he's a single guy. Imagine. So I was so disgusted. I just told myself I will never talk to this guy again. I just knew I was on my own and I just moved on. But I thank God as the pregnancy went by, I accepted my situation. I just began in my own way, just deciding it's not too late. So I went to Strathmore briefly to do evening classes. Then once my daughter was born, when she was 6 months old, I was now mentally okay. I just said it's time to get myself together, began looking for jobs and got a good job. And that's how I began working. But because now I was already in my mind backslidden, the people in church knew I was pregnant. So I knew, in my mind, I knew I can't go back. That is, I can't go back to church or anything. I've disappointed God. Back then, my way of coping with mistakes was to just run away from God. So I was like, now I've messed everything up, even God, I'm sure he's angry with me. So I'm just meaning to tour dunia tu sasa. So in the beginning, I just used to go to work, come back home because my daughter was small, go to work, come back home. Then pretty soon, of course, because I'm a young person, early 20s, men start cheating on you, And then the trauma of being pregnant and everything now has passed. Now I have a job, I have money, because initially I was getting frustrated and feeling guilty around the house because I was now burdening my mom. She has to pay for me for clinic. She has to do this for me. And my sister is still in high school. So I was feeling so guilty. My sister is now in university. And now with my sister's university, the money which was fundraised for me is finished. So my mom is paying for my sister's university herself. Then now I'm pregnant and that is money. So I used to feel so much guilt. But after I started getting my own salary, even if it was small, at least I felt the self-respect coming back. Now I can take care of my daughter's expenses, pay the house girl. At least now, pretty soon now I got into the groove of that life. I'm working. I have a house girl and now this is my new normal. Began dating, just began living the life of any other young person. Dating men, you break up with this one, you date another one, all that drama. Of course, now alcohol is back in the picture, but now in my mind, I was moderating because I was only drink when I go out. Like if I go out to those guys, I drink. But pretty soon now, since I was drinking more and more regularly, like on weekends, I noticed for me, and most people who identify as alcoholics say, I learned this later in recovery, the people who have the predisposition to become alcoholics, from the beginning, they don't drink like normal people. And at that time, I didn't know, but now later on when I became an alcoholic and I looked back at the way I used to drink in my 20s, I realized I was not drinking normal. Because when I would go out with my friends, I was the only one who would black out. Like I would take 2 drinks, black out. The rest of the night, I'm sleeping. I have fallen asleep. So people, the whole night time, they're having fun. Me, I'm just asleep. They wake me up when it's time to leave. So it's like my body could not handle alcohol from the beginning. Remember the first time I drank, I went to hospital. This time now I would go to my friends. After a few Smirnoff, I black out. I'm being woken up. Now we have gone somewhere else or it's time to leave. So even back those early days when I would drink, I would have memory relapses because either I would wake up somewhere, I didn't know how we got there, or I fall asleep, I'm being woken up, or I bedwet. For some reason, alcohol used to make me do that a lot, But I didn't know it was a symptom of possibly having a likelihood of becoming an alcoholic. I just thought alcohol affects me like that. But other people could. And then when I would start drinking, I couldn't stop. I would drink very quickly until I black out. Where some people would even stay with one bottle for 2 hours. They're just sipping. Me, I couldn't drink like that. That to finish quickly, take the next one quickly, then black out quickly. Yeah, so anyway, the rest of my 20s were like that. Just still very depressed, still getting friends, going out, getting boyfriends, all this and all those things, all those boyfriends I was getting, all those sexual experiences were making me more and more depressed, because then I would feel like I'm wasting myself, like my relationships are not lasting, men are always hurting me. So that's just how life was. It was just a very miserable life, but I was just doing it because I thought that's what everyone was doing and I had nothing else to do, nothing else to fall back on. My daughter is still very small. So sometimes I would go out with my friends, come back home on Sunday, and then Monday now I begin the work week. But I would work, I would not drink during the week. It was just like that, year after year. But meanwhile, the depression is getting worse as the years go by because of the things I'm doing, the drinking, sleeping with different men. It just used to make me feel so foolish, wasted. And the interesting thing is all these experiences were happening when I was drunk, but I was not making the connection that alcohol is a problem here, though you're not drinking all the time. But eventually now, by 2009, the depression was at a max. I was feeling, I don't know how to explain it. Yes, I wanted to die, but now it's like there were voices in my head telling me to do dangerous things. Like sometimes I would be walking on the street and then I'll just hear a voice telling me, just jump in front of traffic. What if you just jump in front of traffic? You will be hit by a car and you'll die, or at least you'll end up in the hospital and you'll have a break. Sometimes I'd be at work and then I would just hear a voice in my head telling me, go and throw yourself down the stairs and then you'll break your legs. Then you'll be admitted to hospital maybe for 1 month and then you'll get a break. It's like I wanted a break from life because I was so depressed. I didn't want to work. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to just sleep and do nothing. And so those voices in my head would tell me, if you break your legs, you'll end up admitted in hospital. And it's a legit reason and you won't have to go to work or do anything and just be in hospital. It was bad, it was tormenting thoughts, and there were real voices, like demonic voices. I was just hear something telling me, just do this. Why don't you just do this? But I would not do it. But I was so tormented and so depressed. I was just miserable. And yet seemingly, if someone would look at me, they'd be like, you have a good job, you're earning a good salary, everything looks okay, but it was not okay. And at that particular year, I was so tired of the life I was living that now I began wanting to recommit to give back my life to Jesus again, but I was scared. I was feeling like I've done too many bad things. I can't get born again. I can't rededicate my life back to the Lord. I've done too many horrible things. So what I began doing, I remember one time, I used to love going for spoken word poetry. So at that time, and then there's something else I didn't mention. Around 07, I had had such bad experiences with men that there's a day I began, again, a thought came into my mind that maybe you're supposed to be a lesbian. It was just a random thought. And remember, I have never been attracted to women at all. It's not something I've ever struggled with or ever happened, but that idea just came. And that's why I truly believe the devil is real, know he's real, and demons literally drive you to do things. Because that thought came randomly into my head as an idea, and I decided to act on it. And at that particular time, there was no, like, internet was not really there in Kenya. There was only Facebook. There wasn't really much. There was no streaming of movies. So back then you had to borrow actual DVDs in video shops. So there was a series that had come out, a lesbian show, and it was very popular, but you had to rent it out. They had to ban for you. So because I'd heard about it somewhere, I went and requested for it and began watching. It was just like a series, but the characters were lesbians. They were getting married, they had jobs. So when I began watching that show, I was like, maybe all along I've been a lesbian. Just crazy. It began with a thought. I acted on it by watching that show. And that show, the more I kept watching season after season, it made that entire lifestyle now look so real. And I was like, this is it. So I decided to pursue it out. At this time, I don't even know even one lesbian. At that time, it wasn't like today when so many people are identifying as gay and whatever openly. It was like I didn't know even one person. But I decided to seek it out. So I began Googling, using Google to Google lesbians in Kenya. Then I found they used to be called like chat groups. Back then when you used to have those old phones, they were called the QWERTY phones. And there were no like things like TikTok, Instagram. It was like, they used to be called chat groups. Like you join a chat site, then people are just chatting live there. So I joined those groups. Then I discovered some group of lesbians, and they used to post when they are meeting. So one day they were planning to meet in some club in town, where apparently that's where gay people used to meet. So I had gotten some girls' number there. So I went to that meeting. So you're all meeting each other for the first time. Oh, you're so-and-so in that chat site, you're so-and-so. So I remember I sat down, and most of those girls were younger than me. They were in their early 20s, 19. So I sat there that night with them in that club, and I was like, I don't belong here. I was like, what am I doing here? What is wrong with me? Because they're so young, they're immature, they're saying strange things. But because I have told myself, maybe this might be who I am, that's why my relationships with men don't work, I just stuck it out. So I hung out with those girls a few times, and I was like, no, I can't. Too much drama and crazy things. I don't know what to explain. Those girls are the ones who introduced me they used to go to strip joints. So I went twice to strip joints with them, and I was like, I can't, this is not my life. I'm being someone I'm not. So I stopped hanging out with them, but I still wanted to explore this lifestyle. And one time randomly, again, the devil will always bring you things if you're looking for them. They are there. Randomly at work one day, I was on Skype, and some random girl from Liberia pops up on my Skype and starts during post-election violence. And then she tells me that she's from Liberia and her girlfriend is in Kenya, and she's trying to contact her and she's not picking her phone, and she's worried because there's violence in Kenya. Then I was shocked, like, this is an actual lesbian I'm talking to. So she gave me her girlfriend's number, and I called her. Then, long story short, that's how I got to know that Kenyan girl. And yeah, like, then I developed feelings for her. But remember, all my life I've never struggled with these things. But I sought it out until now it became a reality. But I thank God it didn't last long. Like I got to know this lady. I just really became like attracted to her, but it didn't last. After a short while, like we started quarreling and everything. Then shortly after that is when I gave my life back to the Lord. So I never went full into that lifestyle at all. I was spared. But so fast forward to 2209, I have only like had feelings for this one girl and it didn't work out, but there's still lesbians I'm meeting, and some of them are trying to get me involved with them, but I'm refusing because I didn't like them. I found them very immature and very dramatic and just all manner of drama. So I just used to just be their friends, but not get too involved. But then one day I used to go for spoken word poetry, and there was this guy who was a Christian, a born-again Christian, and used to do spoken word poetry. He was like the only Christian in that scene. Yeah, I remember his on stage name was Number 8, and used to do amazing Christian spoken word. So when I began seeing him, I was convicted, like the Holy Spirit. I was like, wow, look at this guy. He's performing in clubs, but he's a born-again Christian and he's preaching the gospel through poetry, and he's not ashamed. Even in this environment, he's not drinking, he's not doing anything, he's just using poetry to preach the gospel. And I really used to admire him. I was like, wow. Because remember, I was once born again, but now I'm feeling so guilty. Like, now look at me, the things I'm doing. This guy is a Christian, and look, his light is shining. So I began following him on Facebook. Then I began messaging him and telling him, wow, I was once born again, but I backslidden. Then he just became my friend, but it was mainly a Facebook friendship. He used to encourage me and tell me, Mwendwa, just repent, ask Jesus to forgive you, and he'll forgive you. But I was telling him I can't. Like, I can't, something is stopping me, and I feel like I've gone too far, you know. But he just used to keep encouraging me. I used to follow his posts. He was such a nice guy. And then one day, after talking to him for a few months, and then also he connected me, his brother was a pastor, so I also used to follow his brother's posts. And so one day I remember it was a normal day, I went to work. I was so depressed. Those thoughts of death were still there. I came home that day and something happened. I don't know what it was. I put my daughter to bed. I used to even read for her, she had a children's Bible. Then she slept. Then I just knelt down on the side of the bed and I just wept. I began praying. I don't know where it came from. It was just the Holy Spirit. I just began repenting and telling Jesus, I've messed up, I've failed you. Please, if you can forgive me, because right now I am bound, because I had so many bondages. By that time I was drinking more frequently. I couldn't stop drinking. Sometimes I would even sneak out of work at lunchtime to go drink. I was like hooked to like watching pornography, just a lot of bad things. Then I'm hanging out with these girls I don't even like. I just knelt down and just cried. I began wailing, like I was crying, heavy sobs. Mucus was coming. I was telling Jesus, please have mercy on me, forgive me. I'm sorry for everything I've done. If you can help me, please help me, because I don't know what to do. Because I was bound by so many bad things and I couldn't stop. So I prayed, then I slept. Again, just like it happened when I was 20. When I woke up in the morning, I kid you not, everything was gone. I had no desire for alcohol, no desire for any pornography, no desire to see those friends of mine. And I had the boldness. I was actually born again. So I remember I was like, wow, like it just happened. Instantly I was set free. In the morning, I went on Facebook, blocked all those people I was talking to, the lesbians, the people I used to drink with, I just blocked them. I texted so many of them and told them I'm now born again, I can no longer interact with you. Blocked their numbers. Began posting on Facebook that I'm now saved. My life just changed instantly. And some people would still try and tell me, oh, Mwendwa, please let's meet. I miss you. Tell them I'm sorry, I got born again. Like, it was that serious. I just cut off everything instantly, and then I went back to the same church which I left many years ago when I got pregnant. Just went back with my daughter, and I was like, I'm born again. God has forgiven me. I don't care what anyone says, and no one can kick me out of the church. So at first I was afraid. I was praying. I used to ask God, am I just go to another church? I start afresh. But the Holy Spirit was telling me, no, go back to that very same church where you fell and go back there and start from there. That's the right thing to do. Because it was still I never, I just stopped going. So I just went back, just began attending church. And then after a year, this time I didn't go so fast into getting into ministries like I was doing before. This time I took time to grow, just go to church on Sunday, listen to the word, go home, study the Bible, pole too. And then eventually after some time now, I went back again into Sunday school ministry and other ministries in the church. And this time, my life completely changed. And I started growing in salvation. I was doing evangelism. I was an intercessor in church. I was doing outreaches. I used to evangelize on the streets. I began a feeding program for street boys who I used to preach to and make tea for every week on Sunday. I had a big group of like 20-something street boys I was preaching to and mentoring and feeding every week for almost a year. And I was doing so many ministries, mainly outside, going to the slums, preaching in the slums to women, helping them start businesses, things like that. And everything was going on well. But unfortunately, I don't know why my life always used to be like that. Like, it was 5 years, but the worst was yet to come, believe it or not. But after 5 years of being strong, saved, again, a couple of things happened, which again sent me on a downward spiral. That church where I first joined when I was born again and went back to, I left. There's something that happened and it offended me and I left. And that was a big mistake because I didn't realize it then, but that was the beginning of my problems. Because when I look back on it, that was not a reason to leave my church. It wasn't like a major thing, like they've begun doing witchcraft. It was a very good church. It was just a small thing that offended me, and I decided to leave. But it was a wrong move. I was just foolish. I just left. I didn't even talk to my pastors. I just disappeared. I was like, you know what? If this church is going to do this, I'm not going to come back here again. It was a very wrong thing to do, and I was being judgmental. Because I learned the hard way later on that you should not leave a church just because all churches have issues. There's no perfect church. And I mean, if there's a small issue, you leave a church. As long as they're preaching the truth, they've not gone into error, By that time, I didn't know. I was still young. Kuna moto mingi. I thought that I knew better. And then I was meeting now a lot of people from other churches. So I left my church and then I decided maybe I should. And then I began meeting ministers of the gospel who were doing deliverance ministry. The church I was in was not so much into deliverance, though it believed in deliverance, it believed in prophecy, but it was a proper Bible-believing, a strong denomination. So there was balance, like mainly it was focused on the word. But of course, if people needed deliverance, they could get delivered, but it wasn't like the main focus of the church. But now, when I left my church, I met another man of God on Facebook who became my friend, and he had a small church in Mpesa. So I began going there for a while before I figured out which church I will join. And his was a deliverance ministry and prophetic, just casting out demons all the time. And now when I began seeing those ministries doing that, I was like, wow, like these churches are actually doing the work, what Jesus was doing, casting out demons. And I just started liking such ministries. I don't know why. Like I used to, but it was a genuine church. And because I used to love seeing people who come in, they're bound and they're set free. But I didn't join his church. I just used to go once in a while because he was my friend. But soon after that, because I was looking for a church, I came across this woman who was calling herself an apostle on Facebook. So I saw that she has a church somewhere in her home, and I decided to visit. She used to have meetings on Saturdays. So since I was looking for a church, I decided to go. And I was fascinated because it's a woman, and then she seems to have a prophetic ministry. So I went. I did not know that me leaving my church the way I did and leaving it for those reasons was dangerous, and it was wrong, and it's what was going to open a door without me knowing that would lead later on to me backsliding and completely going back into the world. Because there's a place where Jesus says that when an unclean spirit comes out of a man, it wanders in dry places. And then after some time, it says, let me go back to the house I came from, because it has nowhere to go. So that unclean spirit goes back to the former house. And when Jesus was talking about a house, he was talking about a human being. So the unclean spirit goes back to its former home, the person, and when it comes back, it finds the house swept, clean, and empty, unoccupied. And then now it didn't come back by itself. It goes and takes 7 stronger spirits in itself and comes back with them. And now there are 8. And Jesus said that the state of that person becomes worse than before. So unfortunately, that's what was going to happen to me. I thought here now my life is shaping up. I'm born again. I'm serving God. Everything is finally in place. My daughter is going to school. I'm a responsible mom. I'm taking her to church. I'm finally bringing her up in the ways of God. But I didn't know that the worst was yet to come.